Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Crown and today we are going to have some more stories that I hope that you will enjoy. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go! First story. Try to extort, harass and ruin me? I'll make sure you're rightfully convicted for disability fraud. I live in an illegal rental in a place you'd call a landlord's market. There was a housing shortage, and although I had a great job, no credit problems, no background issues, it was impossible to rent somewhere affordable because of my dog. I eventually found a great place, but it came with a naughty landlord. She lived on the property. I am not that choosing beggar, however, so I take it. For 12 months I endured the landlord's violation of my rights, taking deposits she should not have, micromanaging my personal life and my guests, and it's pretty awful. She's always high on painkillers with tiny pin needle pupils, telling people weird stuff and trapping me in conversation I'd rather not hear. Faced with homelessness, I take the trampling of my rights and privacy. She made me miserable. After a year I had enough. She crossed the line when she had my boyfriend removed by the police when I was at work one day. He had been staying less than 48 hours, and I was gone for 2 weeks at home and had arrived back to my rental 48 hours before this. No one was in my rental while I was gone. On top of tossing my boyfriend out, she delivered the bill for his rent and utilities for staying the past 2 weeks that I was gone. No one was in my house. She already bullied me. I guess she thought she could extort me. She created fake court paperwork to intimidate me. The bills I receive from her are insane. They are not the writings of a lucid man. She gets all sorts of details wrong and makes personal statements that are inappropriate. The place was empty and I was gone, but she wrote a bill and insisted I pay for his tenancy. And this is when crap hit the fan. I finally stand my ground. Extortion is the limit. Everything is falsified. I think it was a Vicodin talking and making her brave. As an aside, that will be super relevant later. Her employer had an open fraud case against her. She told me early in my tenancy because she dared him to come after her. Perhaps she should not have dared so hard. After the fake tenancy debacle, things get real. I take off work to read up on my rights and protect my dog/stuff. She starts harassing me. Specifically, she did these things over the course of a few days. Called from a blocked number and asked for a call girl. Called my work as a new landlord seeking a reference and told him I was partying, why I wasn't at work. Came into my yard at 11 at night, stomped up on my Porsche to scare me, then walked out of the yard saying it was a free country when asked what the hell she was doing. Called a humane society and told them I had a vicious dog on the loose who attacked her dog. Called the police and sent them to my job. I work with kids, claiming she found drugs in my house. Needless to say, I was pretty freaked out by all of these things. I got a temporary restraining order against her. She couldn't keep trying to ruin my career and get my dog euthanized and attempting to intimidate me. It was good for 3 years. I was happy I won in court and it was a great move for my safety and empowerment. However, when I did move, about 10 days after her extortion, she falsified documents, kept my deposit, and I was forced to go back to court to get my money. Again, I won. And although it took a lot of time and energy, eventually it was garnished from her account. I not only got out of my lease rightfully, but took my deposit money back against her will, and I had a restraining order for 3 years, and she did not know my new address. I was thrilled. The torment she put me through was unbelievable. So let's cut to the revenge. Remember that fraud case she boasted about? Well, it came back to bite her. Landlord boldly did construction, high as a kite on Vicodin, while collecting disability because she was wheelchair bound. See the issue here? She played the system to get into paid early retirement, ate pills all day, increased her property value by building up her space, and collected money from illegal rentals. 4 months before I moved out, she was doing construction, and I had a strange feeling I should document her fraud. I knew she could turn on me at any point. And well, I'm sure glad I had the foresight to do so. She had gone to work the first day of her contract, and falling out of a wheelchair on a ramp that was not up to code. Almost 4 weeks later to the day, she was happily at home, continuing with her activities, building a tool shed from scratch, and she was doing construction. With no wheelchair. Duh. She was bold and figured she could never get caught. She was doing all sorts of physical activity. I decided to film her, made sure the date was noted. I also took pictures, and some part of me just knew I should document what I was seeing because she was an awful human who was leashing off the system. She worked in education and she couldn't be fired. Her position was tenured, and she was holding her spot while on medical leave for over 4 years. They legally couldn't hire a new teacher. Substitutes poured in and out of her classroom. Hundreds of children missed out on a legitimate education because she held her spot. She was scum. I worked in a similar field, so I knew what damage she was doing with her actions. Back to the eviction/TRO event. Shortly after moving out, when the restraining order was in effect, I went to her employer and offered evidence in his fraud case. It was a serious state-led fraud case against her. They were going after her. He was elated that I had such strong evidence. He put me in touch with private investigators. I handed over the evidence after sitting down with them and giving my statement of her activity and how she was mobile at home. I did not have to exaggerate, and I didn't have to lie. I just told them exactly what happened. Even if she didn't burn me, I feel like I was doing my civic duty by ensuring the kids had a real teacher in their classroom instead of this piece of garbage. Months later, I called the investigators and found out my evidence was what really sealed the deal. She was convicted of disability fraud. She was fired from her position and was potentially going to pay back years' worth of disability payments. I did that. I am the reason her scam fell apart. She thought she could bully me into extortion, but she didn't. She thought she could ruin my career and hurt my dog when I stood up to her. She didn't. In fact, I won. It was what I needed to be empowered after she crapped on me. It wasn't even revenge as much as standing up for myself. If she did have to pay it back, she'd only have her house to pay with. My dream is that she lost her house, ended up a renter, and just hopes for a kind landlord. Next story. 90s MMA bully served some karma. Story takes place in the late 90s, 1998-1999. I've been training martial arts from 1994 up to the unfolding events. During this time, my primarily Hapkido class had transitioned towards a more MMA-type atmosphere as my father had trained Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, plus a multitude of various other martial arts. I was an assistant instructor. He was more than happy to help my friends grow as practitioners, or even just as a person. I've been in this class from 1996, and my dad had pre-trained me starting in 1994. So 1998 rolled around, and the entitled kid of the story is registered by the entitled mother, and is now the tallest student in the class. The kid was kinda built like Snoop Dogg, tall and lanky, with very little muscle mass compared to his height. After about a week, the entitled kid starts trash-talking people, cheating on exercises and warms up, and starts pushing the smaller students around, myself included, in the smaller student category. Little by little, the entitled kid is becoming one of the most disliked students in the whole class. Instructors are starting to notice little things here and there, and punishing the entitled kid with extra exercises, resulting in his true laziness and lack of respect for others to shine through. Sure enough, the entitled kid turned into the toxic child that even the instructors did not like. The day of reckoning. This particular day, our instructor had rented out the community amenity hall to host class as he thought it would be a good venue to teach us how to do judo roll well. There was a set of 5 stairs which led to an elevated stage area in the amenity hall, which we'd basically do half a front flip down the stairs into the judo roll on some 1-inch thick mats. After class, the entitled kid starts running around with his training gloves on and starts punching whoever he wants as hard as he wants because it's hilarious to him. Not wanting to get in trouble for getting into a fight because my dad disciplined me physically, I tried to keep my distance until it was time to go home. So I went and waited outside the amenity hall. Apparently, the entitled kid saw me try to slip out and began chasing me, with the intention of making me his next victim. So I started running around corners, around tables. I got to an aisle of planters where I realized I wasn't going to outrun him, and he wasn't going to stop. So as this entitled kid was closing the gap between himself and me, I turned around with no gloves on and threw a haymaker straight right at his face. Probably out of sheer luck, the punch landed on his nose and he fell to the ground immediately, bleeding profusely. I started to yell/cry because my emotions were running on maximum, saying something along the lines of, "I'm tired of being picked on." Watching him get away with it, picking on my friends, and him being a jerk all the time. One of my instructors heard the commotion, came to investigate, and saw me standing there with my fists balled up, looking ready to fight, with the entitled kid starting to get up, hand covering his face, dripping blood. The instructor ran over to us and escorted us to the main hall, where my dad and the entitled mother were. The entitled mother screamed when she saw the entitled kid's blood-covered face, threatening to sue whoever had hurt her baby. The instructors began tending to the entitled kid, and my dad pulled me aside to ask for my side of the story. I told him the entitled kid was going around with his sparring gloves on, punching people as hard as he wanted. Then I tried to run away, but he was too fast, and I didn't want to get punched or beat up, so I punched him first. One thing my dad always made sure to tell me since I was little was that I'm nobody's punching bag, and if he ever finds out I'm fighting for the wrong reason, he and I were going to spar, which terrified me. He stared at me for 5 to 10 seconds, probably looking for any trace of me lying. And after I finished recapping what happened, he told me to go sit on a chair next to the wall of the amenity hall. By this time, the entitled kid's face is mostly cleaned up, and the entitled mother is pinching the kid's nostrils shut with a paper towel, talking to him about who, what, why. So the kid finishes telling his mom, "I was playing tag with everyone and OP punched me in the face because he doesn't like me." I remember this next part quite clearly because it was a legendary moment for everyone in the class. My dad had just gotten about 8 to 10 feet away when he heard the last part of the entitled kid's lie. Dad says, "Sorry. Did you say that OP punched you in the face like that because he doesn't like you?"
Yeah. Who exactly are you?"
"Well, I'm the father of the kid that did this to your son." He points at me sitting on the chair by the wall. "My name is OP's dad, which we could have met on a better occasion. Kid, how come OP's story and yours are so different?"
"Oh, really? What did he say happened?"
"OP said that your son has been bullying him, and today happened to be the day that he got pushed too far."
"Oh, I highly doubt that."
Everybody in the class, how many of you were punched by the entitled kid today outside of practice? Then 5 people raise their hands. How many of you have seen the entitled kid bully OP or anyone else? 9+ people raise their hands. How many of you were playing tag with the entitled kid today? 0 people raise their hands. The mother screams,
"They are all lying."
Wonder what a judge would think about such a conspiracy. Look, your kid isn't as much of an angel as you think he is. And the reason you don't know that is because you never stayed to watch how the entitled kid is in this class. You can ask any of the instructors in here about the entitled kid's work ethic.
Why would I ask people who would obviously be on your side? I'd much rather talk to one of these so-called parents that stay for the whole class.
Take your back. There is 4 here right now. OB, get over here right now. Cue me sprinting to that side. He tells me, if this kid starts to bully you again, you have my permission to defend yourself. If you see him bullying anyone else, I expect you to speak up. Doing nothing in the presence of people getting bullied is the same as condoning it. Do you understand me?
Yes, sir.
Lady, if your son continues to bully our students, or my son, then you will hear about it. Any questions or comments? She tells her kid to keep pressure on his nose
And tells him, we are going to see what your father thinks when we get home. Let's go.
And both of them exit the amenity hall. The entitled kid ended up coming to 2 more classes after this, one of which the mother stayed for before quitting. He lived in the area where the classes were held, so my friends and I would see him now and then, but he avoided us. I hope you enjoyed the story. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.